Grape farming in Uganda is a relatively new industry, but is rapidly gaining popularity due to the favorable climate and soil conditions that are suitable for grape cultivation. With proper care and pruning, they are long-lived and productive plants with a lifespan of over 100 years. Grapes are mainly grown in the western part of Uganda, which is exactly where we are, the great land of milk and honey. This is one of our success stories. A couple of years ago, we visited Mr. Ham Ahimbisibwe, a teacher by profession and a grape farmer in Mbarara district, who, driven by passion, kicked off the grapevine venture on a small piece of land and eventually upscaled to 10 acres.
Came up here and bought this piece of land intentionally to start the project of growing grapes. So this method of using wires will keep the crop low, and we like it here because when you are spraying there is no danger of the chemical either dripping into your head or even into your face.
Today, we get to see how much farther he has come. The farmer has considered changing his cultivation style from an arbor, which he used on the small piece of land, to the trellis method, the value addition, and learned so much more about the markets and his future aspirations into the winery business.
Welcome back to another episode of Seeds of Gold. We are always on a mission to find the farmers that can figure out the gold in the seed. And today we are in the beautiful landscape of Nyakayojo in Mbarara district. And with us we have Mr. Ahimbisibwe, a brilliant grape farmer. And this is our second time visiting the vineyard. Mr. Ahimbisibwe, it's nice to have you on the show.
I'm glad to host you.
It is quite a pleasant view. We love it here. The last time we were here, it looked a little bit different. This is a different method you've gone with?
Sure.
Yes. So what is this method called, and what's the other one?
This one is using traces and lines to have the vineyard grow from a lower level to ease farming, spraying, and every other monitoring, including pruning, so that you don't have to raise your head and up and sometimes have the danger of the chemicals dropping into your eyes as you spray, especially when it's this overhead. The alternative is the overhead, as you could have seen on the way. Many farmers, especially on a smaller scale, prefer that one because it's also beautiful in its own way. Yes. However, I preferred this because it exposes the fruit and the whole vine to the sunshine, to the wind, and eventually we get a fruit that has the highest sugar content, which is ideal for those who enjoy eating them and even for wine production.
Okay. The cost implications, is this a lot cheaper or is the other one?
Surely, this one is much cheaper in management, and it is less risky in the event of wind and any other weather that could overturn the crop. This one is easy to lift up and again raise to the lines or the wires and save it from destruction. Okay. But when it is this rack on top, it can collapse and then you will not manage to pick any fruit.
Pruning. Proper pruning of a grapevine is very important for one to obtain maximum yields of high quality grapes and to allow adequate vegetative growth for the following season. The grapevine must be properly pruned, as our farmer will explain.
When we are at pruning stage, which is the initial one, to induce flowering and the sprouting of branches, you have to prune. You have to get very many people who understand the art of pruning. And we spend, at that time, we spend up to 900,000 a month. Then when we go into spraying, we spend about the same amount, 900,000, 1 million a month. Then at such a time, we don't spend much because it is the manager hiring a few people to work on daily basis. Around this time, we may spend like 400,000. And when it comes to
chasing the birds away. It especially depends on how well the yield is coming out. But he has to have about 4 people on the minimum, and each one has to get up to 150 to 200, depending on the age, and sometimes the younger, the children, especially when they are maybe around with his family over holidays, then you can make it cheap. But basically it is around 150 a person, and you have to have a minimum of 4, and you have to pay the manager his constant salary. So we have to spend a lot. Then when it's real harvesting, we have to harvest as quickly as possible, because we normally want to get the whole fruit out at once. We take like 2-3 days. We hire up to 30 people to pick every fruit here. And in just 4 days, you can spend even 1 million, because you want to pay people instantly, and then get trucks to take the fruit down. So the cost per month varies, but the manager gets his standard monthly pay, whether there is work or no work on the grapes. But virtually, there is always work here, as you've seen. And when they have harvested, then there is removing the leaves from the plant to let it harden and prepare for the next season. So every time there is work. Challenges, the first one, as you've seen, when these poros grow old and they tend to fall under the weight of the fruit, as you could have seen now. These workers are working basically on raising the fruit and the vine up back to the line, but it is not as dangerous as it would be if it was a raised rack. And another challenge is that as it ripens, we have many birds coming to peck on the fruit, and you can lose it all. But we hire people to come around and stay the whole day chasing the birds locally. And other challenges by this stage are largely overcome, because at flowering stage we have pests, we have diseases, we can have leaf rust, we can have blight. These ones can destroy the crop, but we normally use the preventive spraying so that they don't come in. And when the fruit has developed or grown, then we don't do more spraying, because it would be making the fruit toxic. So far the bigger part of the danger is covered, and now we keep praying that we don't get a dangerous weather like hailstorm or what, but the rest is now manageable, apart from keeping away the birds when they start ripening.
So the scarecrow doesn't work? You mean?
It doesn't. Birds are wise these days. It doesn't work.
Financial planning is a must. Starting a grape farm requires significant investment in land, equipment, and labor. Develop a financial plan that includes projected expenses, income, and profit margins to ensure a long-term success of your business.
Here we have about 5 acres, and we are adding another 5 that side, if you have visited, and this will be like 10. But for us to start these 5 acres, we spent up to 20 million. Reason? Tilling this area, this ground here, which is stony, full of rock, is not easy. You don't have tractors to work here. Machines can't work here. So it's basically the hand and the pickaxe, and you need a really energetic man. And the amount they charge per acre is quite high, because an acre they were charging us 900,000 an acre. Applying of manure long before you get the seedlings, and the seedling cost us 3,000 each of these. Until for the next garden, we had to develop our skill of preparing our own seedlings. Now we can produce our own seedlings when we need them. There is another huge cost of these poros. And then these wires, we were buying them from Steel and Tube outlet in Mbarara. They are not cheap, because the roll is 130 up to 150, and we had to use about 30 rolls all over, as you could see. So it is. Now we are looking at maybe acquiring a few machinery to help us really go into that. And in fact, the realization that with value addition or processing these grapes into wine would give us a lot more income, especially for the future. That is what is encouraging me even to expand and add another garden. And I assure you I'm ready even to get, if I get another piece of land, I will add so that I can have sustainable production. But I'm basically looking at going into wine production. And very soon you will see it on market.
I'm sure we will.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for having us here. We'll take a short commercial break, and when we return, it's Bukola Chemicals with the experts.
One thing is for sure, we are bound to learn a lot and maybe, just maybe, consider taking the same path as Mr. Ahimbisibwe.
This had fallen. And you had mentioned that the fruits get really heavy.
Some of these turn this brown because they have been exposed to the sun, and sometimes the stem can be damaged to cause insufficient water, and these tend to dry and fall off. Alternatively, it can be disease, which may need experts to investigate and give us advice. After like 14 months, it started flowering, and
So this,
got the first fruit.
wait, when they ripen,
This is a ripe one. I don't know where they picked it, but it's not very ripe. This one, and this is the but it's not very ripe. It's still, in fact, the ripest. When you pick like this one, you see it has already turned brown here.
yes,
And when you pick such,
it's
it is
not
still
yet.
it's not as brown. So when you compare, this one is ready. This one is not.
It's not.
Some people suck such, but it's not good for the teeth. It causes irritation, these sensitive teeth. But this one will only give you a very sweet bit of it.
Yeah.
And if you go on comparing, you see the ones that is tending to red is not the best, but this one which has turned real black. So these ones are not ready, you may say.
Because they'll give it.
You can't even see.
You can see a difference
Yeah,
in
the-
colors. So this is the new one that we're going to work on next,
Yes.
and
This is just 2 years, and we are still developing it. It has not given us much yield,
yes,
but at least the initial pruning has already been done, and those are the few fruits you've seen.
yes,
Even these ones on the ground are just those that were left. And when we do pruning, they will remain like this for 1 month. After 1 month, we shall prune them,
yes.
and then they sprout afresh. And the stronger the mother plant down,
The better.
the better and the bigger the yield. That's why every season it keeps increasing on the yield, depending on other factors as well, like if it has had enough rains, especially when it's resting like this. Now when it rains, these ones will take in a lot of water, and when you prune, even if the sunshine comes, it will just grow. It stores its own water its way. So if you observe, every plant almost has the same trend. You see? It is 1, 2, 3. It doesn't go beyond. You can see. It doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
So that's what it is. And we tend to make it spread on the wire,
Yes.
so that it doesn't go up. Grapes do well on stony soils. Even when there is a drought, there is no challenge with them. They continue sprouting and flowering and yielding. Although they would do much better where there is either irrigation or sufficient rain. Certainly the fruits will need water to become more succulent. And after some years, it is always necessary to add manure. And here we normally use animal droppings. We applied poultry droppings, we applied cow dung, we applied goat's droppings and so on. So if you want more yields, you have to periodically add manure. Although perhaps the soils here are so good, the manure we applied at planting is still the one they are living on. And this is now 5 years. When we have to sell to the vendors, they come to the garden, they pick the bunches just by selecting the best for them. And actually that's one danger with them. They tend to abandon others. They want specific uniform size so that when they are selling, they make profit. And for us, if it is too large, then they leave it. If it is too small, they leave it. So we don't prefer. And in any case, when they come, they can buy up to 1,000 kilos. And what will happen when I have about 10,000, 15,000? And then the damage that goes with their selection, dropping of the fruit and so on around. So like this season, I prefer not to involve them at all. Not even to sell 1 kilo to them, because we don't have much. Secondly, they offer us very little money. With me, because they prefer the sweetness of these grapes, because of the method I use, they can give me up to 3,000 a kilo. But for other farmers, it is usually 2,000, 2,500, and then they select and they tend to disorganize the rest of the fruit. So that is the market we have, which is common around. And as you have seen, all over people are growing grapes now on a relatively larger scale. So these vendors cannot match with the product on marketplace. So our focus now for the future is processing wine. And I'm sure we are going in the right direction. As I tell you now, I have prepared over 10,000 liters of wine, which I think in 3 years I could have made like 50,000. Then I hit the market. And I know my wine will be better than that one you buy from South Africa. I'm so confident because it is 100% grapes. We don't add anything.
The vineyard looks very healthy. It looks great. What pesticides are you employing here?
We normally use Harvester XL for spraying and preventing rust and especially the fungus that usually attacks the fruit at the flowering stage. And we add golden drop and for especially helping this Harvester XL to stick to the leaves and become more effective. And there is also dye then in some instances to prevent the disease of rust and especially the leaf rust and blight, just like it is applied on tomatoes. These are the commonest we use around. And when you use them in time at flowering stage, you get the best outcome. If you delay and wait for the fruit to put on, to develop, then you lose it all because it is largely preventive rather than curative. So when the disease has attacked, you may not do much. So my manager is quite keen and he does this in time.
Grape farming requires regular pest and disease control to maintain healthy plants and ensure a good yield. Bukola Chemical Industries has a wide array of experts you could consult with to determine the best pest and disease control methods for your vineyard.
Welcome back to this edition of Expert Opinion. With us, we have our key agronomist, Mr. Seruo Solomon. Today, it's about grapes, wine, and everything grapey. Let's talk the vineyard. Soil. What's the best soil for this?
Well, grapes grow well on sandy, loamy soils. And they also do very well on relatively acidic soils. We are talking about a pH of about 5.5 to about 6.5. And in that kind of environment, they are able to access the necessary nutrients such that they can grow well. Fortunately, grapes also require only moderately or averagely fertile soils, so they do relatively well in areas that probably other crops may not necessarily do very well. And them being a perennial crop, their access to nutrients is not as fast as compared to the annual crops.
Agronomic practices. We want to make sure they're healthy and strong, but we can still see that the leaves are not as healthy. So what are some of the pests and diseases that would affect a vineyard like this one?
Grapes and the vines tend to be affected a lot by fungal diseases. In fact, 80% of diseases that affect grapevines are fungal in nature. And the most common are about two. We have what we call powdery mildew, and we have another one called downy mildew. Those are the most common diseases that attack the leaves especially, but also the clusters of the grapes themselves, and sometimes also the branches. And that could get in the way of the yields. In fact, it could cause a very significant loss in terms of yields if you have either powdery mildew or downy mildew.
I noticed as we look around the entire landscape, most of the farmers have this on a hilly, on a hilly landscape. So is that the ideal landscape on which to grow the grapes, or can any work?
What is interesting about the vines of grapes is they are activated to produce branches by pruning, but they are especially activated to produce flowers, to start fruiting at the end when the temperatures are a little bit high. But also grapes are known to grow very well in environments where you have high temperatures, especially during the day, and low temperatures at night. Usually hilly areas will provide that kind of environment where naturally when the sun is out it will be warm, but in the night it tends to cool. So the hilly areas tend to provide the cooler environment at night that enables the vines do even better. So during the day they will have the experience of the high temperatures, and that will cause them to flower, and then at night the cooler temperatures again are enabling for a vine to do well.
So what are some of the agronomic practices that you would let someone who wants to get into vine farming, what should they do, what should they not do?
One of the most important agronomic practices during production of grapevines is to prune. Pruning takes care of two very important aspects. The first one is to reduce the inoculum of disease, what we would call spores that cause either the powdery mildew or the downy mildew. So the much you prune, especially the diseased leaves, helps you to reduce the amount of spores of these fungal diseases that would later spread to the other crops. But also pruning at the end of the day, as probably mentioned earlier, allows the vine to produce branches and to activate the plant later with the adequate temperature to start flowering. So pruning is one of those extremely important agronomic practices. And now the other is related to disease control. It's part of crop protection, is preventive maintenance and care of the vine orchard. And prevention is extremely important when it comes to fungal diseases, because once they come, they establish quite fast, and that means the imminent danger that the farmer might actually face could actually be very near, just a few days from the initial attack. So initially, grapevine farmers are supposed to scout routinely the vine to ensure that they take note of any changes, any diseased plants, such that they can take action. And as they do scouting to ensure that they get in with action in the shortest time possible, we usually recommend that they apply protective fungicides to help prevent disease from establishing. So there are a range of preventive fungicides that can be used. Some of those include Indofil, which contains mancozeb, and the others include Harvester and Harvester XL. It's very important for the vine farmers to ensure that they alternate these fungicides to delay resistance development, where the disease that is being treated develops resistance against it. In fact, several fungicides are prescribed for use not more than 3 times in a season. So the alternating ensures that each fungicide has an opportunity to protect the crop for a much longer period of time.
Thank you so much for the insight. That's our show for today. Keep the comments coming in. #NTV Seeds of Gold. Thank you for watching.